Hello, everybody. It's midday. It's Thursday this week. You know that because you know it's Thursday. But this show is Thursday this week. Sometimes it's on the Wednesday. Sometimes it's on the Thursday. It's me, Graham Coath, and Stephen Howe with Howe Ergonomics. Hi, Stephen. How have you been, sir?
I've been very well, thank you. Actually, the confusing thing as well, of course, Graham, is not only have we moved the show from Wednesday to Thursday, but having a bank holiday, in reality, is only Wednesday, because it is technically the third day of the week. So it's all very confusing, isn't it? Certainly this week.
Bank holidays are really weird, aren't they?
and on top of that, Graham, we've my youngest son's school is closed for polling day today, so a lot of the kids are doing, I think around the country, are doing 3-day weeks, aren't they? So even more confusion.
Absolutely. You see that I did manage to do a poll on polling day today.
Yes.
So yeah, it was quite an interesting news story there in the BBC this morning about taking selfies.
Yes.
I can't imagine why anyone would actually want to take a selfie inside a polling station. But I guess, it just leads to the fact that some people might then lose their vote by accidentally showing someone voting. But what the news report was saying, that is actively encouraging people to take a selfie outside of the polling station to encourage other friends and families and colleagues to vote.
Yeah. I saw something again on the BBC website that was again sort of threw me a little bit. Was they have a sort of a page where they show all the front pages of all the national newspapers every day. So if you just want to have a flick through and see what's going on in the world, so you scroll down. But an interesting thing today was they made a line or a comment that said we can't show the front page of certain newspapers because they're talking about the voting going on, and the BBC cannot promote the whole voting piece, which I again was totally unaware. So you flick through and there was only sort of 3 or 4 newspapers where they actually gave a bit of a preview as to what the front page was and what was the main topic, because clearly 3 or 4 had gone down the route of talking about polling, and therefore they weren't able to have their front page promoters, as it were, today.
The whole thing about voting and the politics behind the press is really interesting. I mean, when I studied journalism many years ago, it was quite interesting. Even back then, we used to talk about a percentage, and depending upon who were the main parties, you could only give them a percentage of time, in order to talk, which meant that actually by default, any of the parties further down the chain would never actually get the airtime.
Yeah.
In order to get their view across.
It's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it, really? They need more airtime to publicise themselves, but until they've got more until they're better known, they can't have more airtime. So it's almost just perpetuate the 2 or 3 party state, because you're almost, in inverted commas, locking out those non-mainstream parties, aren't you?
Yeah, and it was a rule. That's what you had to do. You had to give so much to Conservative, so much to Labour, so much to Lib Dem. Anybody else, they could fight for that extra 5% on air, but that's all they were going to get. They were going to get 5-10% of the time on air. That was it, literally. And the only other way of doing it, obviously, was to make an absolute fool of yourself at the voting station, which is where parties like the Monster Raving Loony Party actually came in, and for a while, they gained a few seats, was by making a fool of yourself.
Was it Lord Such? Was that his name?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And well, who's the comedian, the pub landlord? What's his name?
Al Murray.
Al Murray.
Al Murray.
Did you see that a few years ago when he stood?
Oh, yes.
Well, that was tremendous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think unless you're a celebrity, potentially causing a bit of chaos as well, then yeah, absolutely. Thank you, LinkedIn user.
Yeah. Screaming Lord
Such. By the way, you've come up as LinkedIn user. It's one of these things that happens sometime. If you want to let us know who you are in the comments, please do.
Why does that happen, Graham? I know when I've gone into other shows of yours, it's my name's come up as LinkedIn user. Why is it something we haven't done to set up, or?
No, it's just a connectivity issue. I'm guessing it's just an API issue between certain users and the interface, and it's not actually pulling across their details. There you go. It's one of the things for the StreamYard boys to answer.
Yeah.
Hi, StreamYard. If you're listening, why does that happen sometimes? Can we sort it out, please? That would be good. Good afternoon, Alistair. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Oh, we've got some people coming in. I always love Alistair's photos.
Yes.
Look at him. He should just be on Question Time, I think.
Yeah.
Looking like that. Oh, David Lofthouse, and I haven't got a clue where my pretty face has gone. Oh, there you are. That's our LinkedIn user. So, what topics have we've got? A special guest coming in around about past. So, stay tuned for that, folks. If you want to know anything about office seating for the home, if you want to ask the questions that have been burning in your mind about, how do I get comfortable? What sort of seat should I be buying, etc. We have a special guest to answer all of those questions at 12:30. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you have to put up with me and Stephen for 25 minutes now.
Well, we did hopefully have another guest who has just emailed me. So hence my apologies if I was looking down and not looking straight forward. Who is having a few issues connecting, Graham. So we do possibly have another guest, but she is having some issues technological wise. So if she can't get on, we may have to hold her back for next week or the week after. But we were hoping to have someone else, and we're going to touch on the whole area of inclusivity, but we might have to wait on that unless suddenly she is able to join and a third screen appears and we just drop everything we're doing and we talk to her. So
we'll do that, absolutely, if we get a third person in. Now, so you found about 4 stories this week in the news that were worth covering.
It was almost as if this move to a Thursday, Graham, was sort of written in the stars, because there were, in the last 16, 17 hours, 4 articles from my favourite source, which is the BBC website. But actually, there's a huge amount of information on there. I mean, the main one was talking around, I think this, and in fact, I was just out in the car before, and it was the main headline on Newsbeat on Radio 1. And they were actually talking about the fact that the top 50, they've interviewed top 50 companies in the UK, and 43 have said hybrid working is the way they're going to go. And 4 of them are very much keeping hybrid working as a watching brief. So I guess if you work in percentage numbers, it's pretty significant. There'll always be 1 or 2 people who want to get people back to the office, like we've touched on before, from a collaboration perspective. But the numbers are really pulling through. And I think it said something like those top 50 companies, or the 50 companies they interviewed, covered around 1 million workers.
It's amazing.
So huge. And again, I think I shared that article on LinkedIn, and a lot of people have jumped in and commented and sort of liked and shared. So clearly it's something that, we've spoken about on a weekly basis, but it's just growing and growing and growing, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I saw your post on that this morning. You may have seen that I commented on it.
Yes.
Did you? Yes.
That we'd discuss it on Howe Ergonomics, which we are.
Well, I said that we'd discuss it on Howe Ergonomics, and I also said that I know a bus driver in London that's just gone to remote working, and he can now be found in the Outer Hebrides. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about all of this as well, isn't it? Is that, when we talk about 1 million workers, I mean, that doesn't sound an awful lot, but obviously there are an awful lot of people who can't necessarily fit into the hybrid working.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you take where I live here in the southwest, for example, the majority of the population of my local town don't actually go to work in an office. The majority of people here work in a factory. You can't do that hybrid working. So you're either turning up for a shift, or you're turning up for a shift. You're not going to suddenly get people on the breakfast bar at home putting together Henry Hoovers. That's not going to happen.
No.
So what would be really interesting to find out, and if anyone has any kind of figures for this, that we'd be grateful for that over the next few weeks, would be what's the breakdown in terms of types of worker that are likely to be going hybrid, or which sort of people are going to be staying at home and working more, and which ones are going to be going back to the office more. Going back to that news story that we covered a couple of weeks ago about HSBC and the management moving out, etc. At the top of that building, is it higher management that are deciding to work from home? Is it people further down the line that are going to go back to the offices? I'd be really interested to find out what the spread of that is.
It was quite interesting as well. Again, I can't think if it was in that article or something else I was reading, where they were saying in preparation for going back to the office, and this almost goes against everything that you've sort of been thinking, is that the trains and the buses to cope are going to put on more capacity, so to allow social distancing. So their numbers are going to be nowhere near what they were previously. But to almost allow social distancing, they've got to beef up the capacity. So it's almost as if that's going to put a huge amount of cost in, isn't it? There's a huge amount of cost going to go into the transport network to support the fact that there's fewer workers going in. So what's the sort of knock-on effect of that? Will we see? I mean, will there be longer working hours expected? Well, that's not going to happen because it's a unionized industry. But are people going to have to pay more to go to the office because they need more trains, more tubes, more buses? And like we've touched on before, Graham, about stealth pay rises. Is that going to make the drive to work at home increase? Because people are going to go, well, actually, instead of me paying £8 a day on the tube, I've now got to pay 12. Well, it's even more a reason why I want to work at home. So there's going to have to be some sort of, I don't know, sort of subsidy or something's going to have to come along, because the numbers just don't stack up, do they? You're going to have more capacity to move less people. That's got to be paid for. Those people are then not maybe going to want to go in. They're going to want to stay at home, and therefore you need less capacity. So it's such a fluid situation, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, it is. I haven't got the answers to that at this moment in time. It'd be really interesting to see. I just can't see how people will want to go from more money in their own pay packet from working from home to paying out additional money or additional costs on what they were paying in order to get to work. So really, really interesting to see. And I wonder whether some of this is that kind of tension and pull between, especially for the Chancellor, as to, we need to get all of these infrastructures back working again. We need to get support of, local infrastructure as well. And, the coffee shops and all of the people that, the cafes and everyone that supports people that are going back to work. But actually how it hits the individual at individual level. And I'm pleased to say we've got Jodie here, and I think she's up and working. Yeah, she is. So here she is, Jodie.
Hello, Jodie.
Hello, I am here. I was actually trying to improve my background with something that doesn't look like I'm sitting in a pub.
Well, I like
we can just see the word vodka. Like, we can see the word vodka. That's all that matters.
All it says is say no vodka.
Yeah, it actually says say no to vodka. It's 40% stronger than me. It says that because technically I have a bar in my house and I'm relegated to downstairs because we're both working from home. So I usually use a nice background and I can't get it to work.
Don't worry. That's a lovely background. That's real. That's authentic. That's fine. So that's good.
Definitely authentic.
Jodie, for people that have never met you before on one social media platform or another, do explain who you are slightly and give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm Jodie. I am the founder of an organisation called Be People Smart. And basically, we support organisations across all sectors strategically, but end to end, to improve disability inclusion and accessibility. So making sure that people have an equitable experience at work, but also an equitable experience being your customers. Yeah, I've never seen a business model that doesn't include people somewhere. So it's really important.
That's really good. Okay. So, Stephen, did you have some questions for Jodie?
Yeah, I mean, Jodie, we've spoke before over a couple of years in sort of various sort of platforms and levels. But I'm really, one of the things Graham and I are talking about, and as a common theme through our show, is around hybrid working, home working, returning to the office. How are you having to change, or what impact is it having on the work you're doing, trying to sort of integrate in home, hybrid, returning to the office? What sort of impact is that having on from an inclusivity perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a few key things. First of all, there's some people who are making an assumption that home working is always better for people with disabilities. And like everybody else, there's very much a personal choice. It depends on your home setting. It depends on your work patterns and all sorts of things, and also your family and how noisy your children are. So all of those things come into it. So it's really important not to make any assumptions about anyone based on any kind of demographic. But also for some people, actually, if they've been very isolated and that's been really tough, and for a lot of people, of course, that's really had an impact, especially on their mental well-being. Being back in the office, feeling a sense of new normality, getting back in there, in hearing distance without a headset on of your colleagues can make a real difference. And the other thing is there is a bit of hesitance with phased, re-entry and so on, as to how they can actually make accessibility adjustments. Because, for instance, not all desks are even in use and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely doable. I think the biggest message I would give is we can't play a safety card to get out of accessibility and inclusion. So it is absolutely essential that we do still talk to people, find out, what is it that they actually need to make sure that they're productive, that they can get into the office, they can, do all the things they need to do. And then how can we make that work? It may be different to how we made it work from previously, but it doesn't mean we can't make it work. People are quite pragmatic as a rule. We know that the world has changed. So as long as you have an open conversation, I have no doubt people will be willing to work with you. But there are no get out clauses here. You want the best out of your people. And of course, they want to achieve that. People go to work wanting to do a good job. Otherwise, you can't get the same pride. So it's just really important that you do have those conversations.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. I kind of understand both sides, having been a workplace assessor for years. I mean, in the main, if you look at some people that I would have assessed over the years, especially in sort of call center situations or open plan office situations where some of those desk spaces would have got shared occasionally. Some people have an awful lot of adjustments around their desks, and I can see where the concern might be raised by some health and safety officers as to, we've got a lot of equipment on this desk, demounting it all on a day-to-day basis to make sure that and getting it all clean in order to get someone else in for the next shift might happen. So, I mean, have you offered any kind of advice to businesses around that, and tips for how they can accommodate different people?
To this point, it's been very generic, and it has been about having no conversations. And of course, we are also here for our clients to make sure that we can do a bit more sort of direct advice when there's case by case basis. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Everybody's needs are different. It's not like you take all deaf people and then this is what they need, and all blind people or people that are, with reduced vision, and this is what they need. So that's why it's so important that it has to be that direct engagement. Now, I'm not saying you're going to find a perfect solution in this new way of living for everyone, i.e. what they would really want to achieve. But it is about, you know, being open, being honest, like this is what we've got. This is what the bare minimums we have to achieve from a kind of legal safety, whatever standpoint. How do we make sure you can also get what you need? Because I think that is the thing that concerns me a little bit, is this, and I've said it already, but it's not a get out clause. You know, we have to make sure that people are cared for. And to be honest with you, if you don't care about your staff and your customers, your business is going to fail. So, you know, we need to care about the people that are actually producing for us, and also the people that are literally paying our wages by being our customers.
Yeah. Has it been a bit of a concern for you as an organisation as well, just how few companies have actually carried out assessments of staff as they've been as they've moved from the office to home during this pandemic period, and now as they move back are not going to do assessments again as they move back into the office?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a longer way to put that, but yes. There are some organisations doing more than others, right? Which is great. And it's not even a slight on those that aren't, because there's been so much going on. I mean, none of us expected to see this happen in our lifetime. So the fact that we've been living through a pandemic and everyone's been trying to continue, and one thing I would give businesses obviously a lot of credit for, is being able to continue, you know, being able to get infrastructure in quite last minute that enables people who have never worked from home before to do just that. However, that doesn't stop the fact that people are sitting on the ends of beds and things because they don't live in an environment that's fit for purpose, and they're not provided with, you know, a laptop table, a suitable chair, and all these kind of things. So there is a balancing act, but I think whenever we talk to businesses that have a trust-based kind of model, so, you know, people really need, it really does work. You don't really get the regret cost that everyone fears, that everyone's going to jump to, I need 17 chairs because I like to sit in 17 rooms for my, you know, well-being. It doesn't happen. So, yeah, I think it is really important, again, that people are considering this stuff. And then you've got the other factors that some organisations have actually enabled things to be shipped to homes. And you've got this thing of, are we going back full time? Because are we shipping it back? Do we need a replica? How is this going to work? And there really isn't a one size fits all. You can have policy and process, absolutely, but that has got to be a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's, for me, that's it at the end of the day, that there isn't ever a one size fits all. There never was, though. Outside of this pandemic, there never was. And the trouble was that some businesses always wanted there to be a one size fits all, regardless of whether we, you know, we've been through this or not. In terms of people being at home and working, you know, you mentioned slightly there that it didn't suit some people in terms of isolation, but how have you found, have you got any particular stories about people with disabilities and maybe not getting on with technology in the same way that we perhaps assumed that they might be? Again, you know, there may be assumptions that all of this technology really helps break down sort of disability and inclusion matters, but actually sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind. So first of all, are people who are, you know, deaf or are hearing, hard of hearing. I've been told off recently for using the term hearing impaired, hence my mumbling. So for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, it's really important, of course, that the engagement and the tools are there for conversation. Now, captions are fantastic, and human transcription is so accurate. It's a brilliant tool, but it's not always possible. I mean, sometimes there are budgetary restraints. I'd love there to never be, but that can be a fact. It can also be last minute conversation, which means that, you know, there wasn't time to make a booking, for instance. Now, automated captions are coming on. So I'm not knocking the fact that we're getting them. They're not great for, you know, clear conversation where everybody's getting the same message, because the accuracy just isn't there yet. So I wouldn't want to have to rely on them. That's just a fact. So I think that's one thing that's been a big thing, because if by standard practice someone is used to trying to hold all their meetings face to face because it works better for them, maybe it's easier for lip reading as well. Maybe even, I used to work with someone who had a colleague who'd actually learned British Sign Language, and she used to enable him through some kind of translation. All of that stuff was fantastic. You lose a lot of that. I mean, technically, if I could sign now, but you do lose a lot of that when it's all remote. But also, it's not just that. It's stuff like connections. Your broadband goes down because maybe you haven't got the best in your area. You've missed a whole message anyway. So there's the general kind of messaging and capturing and feeling included in that, I think, is one key thing. And another, in general, I think it's become more prevalent for communication materials. People don't often create the communications with accessibility in mind. I had a little nosy at both your email images. Stephen, you do have text on yours, but it's not contextual. You might want to have a look. Graham, you didn't. So these are just some of the kind of top tips that we're trying to run out, especially in the run up to Global Accessibility Awareness Day, if you're not aware, 20th of May. Because trying to make sure that all of your communications are actually factoring in accessibility as you create them. And I've mentioned a lot about, hearing about sight loss. It's not, of course, that's certainly not exhaustive. We have an awful lot of people with dyslexia, with autism, even some mobility impairments because of dexterity. If you don't create your material so that it works for people, they literally miss out. And I think that's become more prevalent because if you don't literally have someone sitting on your shoulder, you can ask a quick question. You don't even realise how often you did that before. All of a sudden, you are really excluded. And that isn't a nice feeling for anyone.
No. Jodie, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much. Stephen, have you got any closing questions for Jodie?
Yeah, well, just one actually, and when I use the word positive, it's in the loosest sense of the term. But from the pandemic that's obviously started back in March last year and is still ongoing, from an accessibility perspective, what's the one main positive that it's actually created, Jodie? Do you think? And you may go, actually, it's not one. There's two or three. But if there was one positive that's come from this, what do you think that is?
There are a few, but I would say if I have to pick one, it has got to be that the unconverted, as I've always called them, the people that really haven't considered this stuff in the past, all of a sudden they're far more aware. They're finding themselves in office spaces that aren't completely conducive to their working practice or what they need to achieve. People who are used to having a PA that literally sits next to them or outside their office door, all of a sudden she might even be in a different country because that's where she's isolated, or he. So I think what's really important is that everyone's kind of gone, wow, if you don't have all the things that you kind of add to your list and you don't have the office environment that you ordered in the first place and the people around you literally at the drop of a pin, the world is a different place. And now I kind of understand more how other people must feel. And I do see so much more action in a sense of organisations are going, we kind of get it now. We need to do better.
Brilliant. Jodie, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to catch up with you later to get my email sorted out.
I thought I'd just put you both on the spot.
No, it's absolutely great. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Nice speaking to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Jodie.
All
the best. Bye.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I think we need to maybe ask Jodie back at a point in the future, Graham. It'd be really interesting to, we've sort of got into it there for 10 or 15 minutes. It'd be good to get into it a little bit more, wouldn't it, at some point in the future on this show?
No, absolutely. And we mentioned broadband, and her broadband wasn't that great, so it was interesting. Everyone needs to get their broadband better. We're joined now by Andy. Andy,
hello.
Thanks for joining us. And Andy's from Ergo Chair. So Andy is here to answer any of your questions on office seating or working from home seating. So if you've got any questions to ask Andy about those things, please do. In the meantime, we're going to grill Andy anyway and ask him some questions.
Go for it.
So one of the things we wanted to know is, look, during this pandemic period, one of the things that people have been banging on about is, is it safe to touch certain materials, etc. Has there been a change in terms of what type of materials people have been ordering in chairs over this period? Have you as a manufacturer seen that a move away from one particular material type to another?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a number of sort of different concerns that have been raised, particularly over the last year. Whether that's the fact of the materials are now much more often going into a domestic setting, which can mean if an end user is buying the product themselves, there's a bit more of a concern regarding, the color of the fabric. They're ordering products that, is it going to suit their home and their home aesthetics? On a more serious note, the industry generally sort of complied with commercial fire regulations, and majority of these fabrics don't comply to domestic regs. So from a manufacturer's point of view, we've worked really hard with suppliers to be able to get products in to fit these requirements. And again, from our side, we wouldn't necessarily know when we get an order if it's going into a domestic requirement and that it needs a suitable fabric. So we've
sorry to interrupt you.
No problem at all.
Isn't it also the case that there's got to be slightly different labeling on a chair if it goes into the home environment?
So when you get to the domestic standards, it's a fire reg. It's British Standards BS 5852 Schedule 4 Part 1 and 2. And what you've got to have there is it's a legal requirement to have the correct labeling on the chair for domestic use. Not only because if the worst case happens, there could be a lot of problems with the insurance. But the label allows you to trace it to source to show that it's going to conform to the legislations that it needs to.
It's really quite interesting. I wonder how many people now are actually at home looking underneath their chair to see whether they've got the right labeling underneath their chair. And it is the case that a lot of chairs, because they are that are sold into the market, because they are actually sold for commercial use, will not have the right labeling on them.
Exactly. And we're still hearing that people are not able to get domestic fabrics on their chair. So for us, it's a fantastic thing because, like I said, we did the work last year, did some great work with some really good partners to get some really nice and varied fabrics in. So for some people, it might be a bit of a tricky subject, but for us, whenever someone comes and asks, it's a nice, easy response. And like I said, we've got the labeling on there, so we're ticking the boxes. But it's really been the education, well, all round really, for manufacturers, for the dealers, for the end users. Of course, there's been a lot of education over the last year through the news because now it's a massively hot topic. But that's something that we were working on, whether it was sending out email mailers to our dealer base, mentioning it on calls to dealers or end users when they come and ask us for advice, and just making sure that when they go to the dealer that they want to purchase the chair from, that they are aware that they need to be letting them know that it's a domestic environment the chair's going into. And yeah, it's making them aware, because there are different legislations. I mean, the other big one within the industry is Crib 5, which is that's for sort of your public buildings, so hospitality, education, hospitals. And then the generic one is the cigarette and match test 1021, I believe, which is just for commercial buildings. So I think it's been an eye-opener, particularly if you've asked your employees to take home the chair from the office. Well, they may be watching this now and think, that doesn't actually comply to the standards. So yeah, been a really interesting subject to sort of be part of. But now I think it's just sort of drumming that message and continuing the education, because I mean, you look at a company like KPMG. I believe today they announced that after the pandemic, there's going to be 2 days within the office. So working from home isn't just going to, you know, completely stop and everyone's going to go back into the office. We know there's a big insurance company called Brightside that have got rid of all of their offices just to have people solely working from home. So it's going to be ongoing. But I like to think that because we understood the requirements sort of quite early doors, that we were able to work pretty closely with some key suppliers and make sure we've got the options for dealers and end users.
And actually, with what you're saying there, it's quite interesting because I know that it's been a short-term solution for a lot of companies to actually just move their office seating to the home. But with what you're saying is actually sometimes that's not actually going to be a legal. That's not going to be legal full term. So
that's it. And again, sorry. So again, where you mentioned there about, you know, the short-term solution, we're very much seeing now that, you know, I don't think anyone realized when we went into that first lockdown that we would still be in the situation we are today. So you completely understand that an employer or someone just purchasing a chair for working from home for potentially, you know, a month or two wouldn't necessarily look at purchasing a higher end chair at a higher bracket. But it's something we're finding personally now that, you know, a year down the line, you've got people that, you know, may have had existing MSDs and these have been exacerbated. Healthy people have suddenly, you know, saying, oh, I've got a little bit of a twinge, sort of lower back or top of the shoulders. So I get that initially people would have gone a little bit cheap to sort of get a solution out to them. And again, cheap, but also they probably were able to get it next day. But yeah, we're definitely finding now that, and it ties into the education of the last year as well, that the mainstream media has been perfect because they've been openly talking about this a lot more. So even though we can do what we can, it's now much more in the general sector. So it's now just sort of, I say, building on, but keep educating people that, okay, a chair can be, you know, £800 to £1,000, which is a big initial outlay. But something we always say is when you're in a chair for 8 hours a day, how much do you spend on your bed and your mattress? Mm-hmm. Which, you know, and it's just looking at the some sort of correlations. But no, we're finding now that people are coming back.
And just a quick question.
No, go on, Steve. Yeah.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, just touching on that and just expanding it a little bit. If you were given a chair if you got a chair at your previous place of work and your employer has sent it home for you to work on.
Sorry, Stephen, my typically, just like Jody, my signal just went then. I got to the start of your question.
No problem. I was just saying, if you were given a chair from your previous place of work and your employer sent it to your home and it clearly isn't for domestic use, because of the certification piece, do you actually need to do anything? Should you be flagging that? Are you potentially sitting on what could be a problem if there was a fire in your home? Or will it be one of those things where there are so many out there that it isn't actually a problem, but should you be flagging it and saying, actually, if I'm staying at home, you need to replace this chair for me?
Yeah, and this comes down to the health and safety of, I think health and safety is such a massive part of companies. It should always have been, but it even more so now. Like you said, I'm sure there's a lot of chairs that don't meet the regs that have been shipped to a home address to just be used in the interim. But look, we're a year down the line now, and if an end user has got something that doesn't have domestic regs, absolutely, we'd be saying get in touch with whoever at the company you work for, the health and safety team, and just sort of put it out there. Because if the health and safety team is aware of this, which again all builds into the education, that person will not allow that chair to not have the correct domestic regs. So absolutely, we'd always say if it doesn't conform to the legislations, then get in touch with someone to to try and get a chair purchased via your employer. And yeah, that's key, really.
Graham, it feels a little bit like the whole DSE assessment piece, a little bit this chair thing potentially. You know, there'll be people who will do the assessment on their home workers, that, you know, and there will be people who will probably do the chairs, but you almost feel you're going to potentially have to go and ask for something like this with certain employers. I think when it comes to a considerable investment, my fear on this would be is, are employers going to hold their hands up for pretty significant investment? But it's, who knows?
Oh, they're going to have to. I mean, that's the be all and end all of it, really, is that they are going to have to put their hand in their pocket. I mean, so it's really interesting. You say that the people initially went out, bought cheap. They're now beginning because they're realizing that was a poor investment in a way. They're looking to spend more, which means actually they could have put that money into something better in the first place. So it was a bit of a poor investment in the first place. In terms of
and we get that.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. You mentioned crib testing. I don't know whether either of you have ever been to FIRA to know what crib testing actually is, but they literally do build a little crib. It's out of like balsa wood with the naked flame in it, and put a naked flame inside it. And the amount of those that they put onto a piece of material is what that crib test is. So crib test 5, you would have 5 cribs.
Okay.
On a piece of material, so much. And interestingly, they have a cupboard. I don't know whether they still do, but they used to. They had a cupboard at FIRA as well, with the biggest number of players' cigarettes in it that I've ever seen. And the reason for that is that these players' cigarettes were the cigarettes that they use for testing, and because they've always used them, they have to continue to buy players' cigarettes. They are a little factoid for you there, if people are wondering how these things actually get tested. But this is the thing: there is proper testing done on furniture of a particular quality, and they should carry these FIRA kite marks and quality marks on that furniture as well, shouldn't they, Andy?
Yeah, that's it. And that's a lot of times when you are speaking to more so dealers regarding the regulations, that is one of the questions, you know, is it labeled up? Absolutely, because it is down to the manufacturer and the reseller to make sure it's on there. And it's one of those things where you're sort of like, yes, it is on there. So it's brilliant for us because we know it is, we've done the research. But again, a lot of people may not necessarily know that. So if someone has got a chair at home and it doesn't have the labels on, it's very much likely that it is not conforming to those legislations.
Now, one of the things that you may have heard time and time again through this pandemic, especially with people working from home, is this is all very well. Especially, I've heard it when I've been doing workplace assessments. It's all very well. You're telling me I've got to have a sit-stand desk in here, or a nice sized desk in here, and I've got to have a proper sized chair, and you know I've got to get all of this equipment in here, etc. But I haven't got room to swing a cat. Mm-hmm. There's just no way. Now I'm going to bring up a picture, hopefully on everybody's screen. What's this, Andy?
Well, so this is firstly the chair is one of our Adapt 600s, and then this is where you can see obviously you've got the laptop stand. So this is a product called our Zenki Tab, which is, I say early stages. Obviously we've got a nice finished product there. Now initially this was sort of looked at for the education world, but like Graham's just alluded to there, a lot of people don't have a spare bedroom for an office, room in a kitchen or a living room, and certainly I don't. So something like this is brilliant for me. And stereotypically, your London clientele spaces at a massive premium. So this was a product that was designed by Nick Arnold, our sales director, who I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, and he designed it, as I said, in conjunction with the education sector, to not just allow for something to give you a lot more room to maneuver and to not take up that much space, because stereotypically you look at, if someone wanted a complete desktop and office setup, the biggest part of that is going to be the desk. But primarily, by having the attachment to the chair, the focus is on the chair. So you are still sticking with a good working posture. You've got all of the adaptations that you could require in the chair. And the other thing is that the tab moves with you. So if you recline, it comes back with you. And of course, with a desk, I know we've got height adjustments, but it's generally a flat surface that you have to go to. So there you've got, you know, some issues of overextension of the arms. But yeah, this is a product, and as it was developed for education, then suddenly it's got a whole new market for, like you said, Graham, where space really is at a premium and people haven't got the room. This can fit onto an office chair, and you're almost sort of killing two birds with one stone as such, because you're getting a chair that's going to really give you support system for, you know, the 8 hours a day or the 24 hours a day if you work that much longer. But also it gives you a surface that is going to move about with you, and it's nice and easy. You know, you just swivel it away, put it down by the side of you if you're not using it, and yeah, it's a really nice sort of adaptation that we can now offer.
That's great. So tell me, I mean, apart from the fact that you do, and this is one of the things that you do chairs that fit people, and that's quite important.
Yes.
Coming back to that point about the chair actually meeting legal requirements for the home. I mean, I'd be quite interested to know how many people have actually looked at the chair in terms of whether it meets them in terms of weight loading requirement, which is a conversation that a lot of people don't necessarily want to talk about, which is, you know, how heavy are you? But the amount of times I've seen people on a child's chair.
Yeah, that's it. And it ties in quite nicely with our whole assessment process, actually, because, like you said, people can be quite self-conscious about their weight and don't want to openly, you know, tell you the exact kilogram or stone that they are. So with our assessment process, it is very much an interactive assessment with the end user. You know, it gets them as part of it. We've got the online EasySpec tool, which allows you to do a real-time prescription as well. But really, I think it's about firstly getting that general information and just letting them understand that this really is an assessment process. We need the information to be able to get you the best possible chair to suit your needs. And on the occasions where you do have potentially a bariatric user, we've got a brilliant chair called the Adapt 700 that has been sort of set up solely to focus on the bariatric size, and that is warranted up to 40 stone. So we've tested that ourselves. We've got our own rig in house, and yeah, again, a lot of work went into that. Not just to look at getting a seat that was big enough for a user to go into, but with the mech, we offer a 2.5 to 1 sort of mech, so it opens a lot more. Stereotypically, I think with bariatric users, a lot of the weight is held in their stomach area or the tummy area, so that's where a lot of the vital organs are. So by being able to open up, it just relieves the pressure on this area when they're sat down. But, you know, we've also got a composite foam seat that we're very confident would say the setup of that will never bottom out which again is quite an issue for bariatric users sometimes, that it can be quite a hard sit, and then, you know, there can be issues with skin integrity. But yeah, I mean, again, it's almost sort of the process from initial assessment, just to, I mean, of course, sometimes it will become quite clear to you as an assessor that, okay, an Adapt 700, but again, we've tried to develop the system and the chair to go in line with being able to help this person as best as we see fit, and then of course we can put the adaptations that we offer and make it as bespoke as the end user may require.
Okay, can you just give us briefly a couple of other examples of types of adaptations you've done for people?
Yeah, of course. So something we're finding quite a lot actually at the moment is a disability called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, it's quite a complex case, and there can be different severities of it. And we've got a product called a V-Track. A V600 with a V-Track back. Now, a V-Track back is primarily a wheelchair adaptation. So we brought that across from V-Track and have adapted it to go into an adapt chair. And essentially, it's a brilliant piece of engineering. It's got wings on the side that, you know, you can ratchet in, so it can give, you know, the lateral support for people such as have got potentially cerebral palsy, and also, you know, there's some webbing straps on the back which you can tighten up, and it conforms to the shape of your spine. So that's quite a complex adaptation as a whole. But a brilliant one for us to be able to offer for people that may not necessarily, you know, been able to get in a chair that looks like an office chair. And I think that's another area that we've tried to make our adaptations is we want our chairs to look like chairs. There are some sort of contraptions, and it fits in with the sort of the inclusivity of, you know, a lot of people don't want to have something that's, you know, got bars and things coming out of it and it looks like a contraption. So we've been quite, not cautious, but very, very aware to make our chairs as adaptable as they can be. We can bespoke. Anytime we get asked to do a different bespoke, we will always do R&D. And what we'll always say is when we've brought an adaptation to market, we've brought that because there's a requirement for it. We've never, you know, just gone off our own bat and said, right, this has a place in that. It's always been sort of from working with our brilliant dealers, you know, assessors, OTs, and just building a product that actually, you know, is going to fit a market. And, you know, we do a lot of things, again, probably similar to what else is on the market, like your coccyx cutouts, your air cells, so your lumbar, sacral, thoracic. We do split seats, which can be, you know, really good for someone who's potentially had an amputation. We are very happy and comfortable to say that, you know, our adaptations list is very, very thorough as it is, but we are always more than happy if, for the most complex situations, to get involved and see how we can help. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are about. We want to be able to provide seating for people that A&1 might not necessarily be able to have it. So, you know, we can really make a difference there. But then on the flip side, we're also more than happy to say we could have 100 people through the door, and every single one of those we could fit, no matter what the requirement. So yeah, we've got a few adaptations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really pleased that we got through that whole conversation actually without mentioning the word ergonomics once.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Because look, as we all know, everyone sitting here, ergonomics as a science is tremendous, and, you know, creating good ergonomic solutions for people is great. But we really have seen throughout this whole period as well. A lot of people just chucking that word ergonomic in front of everything. You know, and it's hopefully in listening to what Andy was saying there, Stephen, what comes out there is this is actually true ergonomics. It's actually adapting the products and the, you know, the environment around that person to benefit and suit that person in terms of their, you know, their productivity and the work that they're trying to do, etc. That's what it makes things ergonomic. Not just sticking a label on something in the first place
and calling it an ergonomic whatever it would be. That product itself cannot be that product itself cannot be ergonomic.
I've got this that's just arrived this morning. It's the newest ergonomic pen. It says so on the tin.
Must be true.
Must be true. Buy this now. It comes in ergonomic grey and ergonomic red. You know, I mean, you know, we just need to see an end to that. We really do. And you know, and for people to understand that actually, if you want to get back to true ergonomics, it's people related. Don't look at the product. Look at the people first. You know, understand the people. You can't sell ergonomics, right? There, bold statement. You can't sell ergonomics. You can sell adaptive products to people. You can sell products to people that help in a situation to make people more comfortable, but you can't sell ergonomics. Can't be done. There you go. Any more questions for Andy, Stephen?
I mean, the one thing we haven't, I mean, you briefly mentioned it, Andy, is the P word, which is price. And you mentioned around chairs. Is that the biggest mistake people make? I mean, we find it with the type of products that we make. Do people too often buy chairs on price and not functionality? Is that the biggest problem you come across? Is that the biggest issue you have to go and remedy when someone has seen a £100 chair that can be delivered next day, and you've then got to go in and resolve the issue because actually that's created more problems than that were there in the first place?
Exactly that. And I mean, it's not just from what's happened over the last year where, you know, it was quick short-term fix. People would go and buy, you know, £100 chair if we weren't in a pandemic, but they were working from home. And look, I mean, I wasn't in the industry a couple of years ago, and when you come in and you really see the chairs and the value that they have, but the benefits of the value that they have, it's, and I keep saying it, but it really is the education, because do you know what? If you went out and got a £200 chair, that's an expense to go and put into a home office. The thing is, it's really getting to market the fact of, you know, if you spend a little bit more money, or in some cases a chunk of a bit more money, you're really getting benefits that are going to affect your body, your health, your lifestyle, and it is a problem, and it isn't our marketplace has stereotypically always been, you know, the 10% of users who need further postural enhancements or further help. So we've not, price-wise, we've not been, you know, in the area where if an office kit out is being done, that they would come to us because our chairs are a little bit more, but they meet a different sort of market. Now, of course, we've got chairs that could do an office kit out, but predominantly the company was founded to really help people. So where we're doing that, price isn't so much of an issue, because people really do understand that they're buying something that's going to benefit their lifestyle.
And don't you think, Andy, that potentially could change now with more people working from home? I mean,
absolutely,
I think it's one thing if you're in an office situation where you're potentially sharing that chair with other users, which has been the case over the years. You know, you're kind of making do on your shift with that chair. But 1 minute, now I'm doing all of that work from home, right? this is my environment now. I actually want to take a little bit of onus on it for myself as well. I want something better. I mean, why don't businesses, here's a good idea, why don't businesses say to people, I tell you what, here's the difference between the chair that we were going to buy you and the chair that you really want. We're putting that amount of money, you put in the rest. I reckon a lot of people would actually put the rest of the money in.
And you know what? I think that's a big one, because a lot of the times, you know, sometimes it can be a bit of a checkbox just to make sure that if a user has been seen by an OT or health and safety have got involved, it's just, yeah, we've got them a chair now that it reclines, it's got arms, it's got a neck rest. Well, for that employee, if they are very much part of the process, and you know, either if we've got level 1, which are more of our out of the box products, and level 2, which is going to be the adapt range. But in both of those, we've got a measuring system. Adapt a bit more complex, but a product like our ZentoFit, which is a remote assessment tool, that really will mean a lot to an employee, and for their work satisfaction, the loyalty to the company. If you know, for not that much more investment from the employer to really get someone feel like they are very much appreciated, get them involved with measuring themselves to get a chair that's really going to fit them. I think the positives certainly outweigh the negatives of a couple of £100. But again, I know I've not said ergonomics, but I keep saying education. but it is really education, potentially, you know, for facility managers, for someone within the health and safety team, the HR team, just that this is available on the market. It might be a little bit more expensive, but you are checking off a lot of things, not just on the health, the posture, the domestic fire regulations, the workers' satisfaction, and yeah, so it's a tricky one with the price, because really in our market, it's not a price-driven product. It's very much the process and what we can offer. But particularly sort of in the level 1 products, where we would generally say that if someone's had a DSE assessment and, you know, they might have a little bit of a sore bottom back, so they might have a lumbar. That's where your level 1s will come in. It's more serious cases to go up to 2, but that's where you'd see the price becoming a bit more of a problem, because you could easily go and get a different chair for a couple of £100, which does similar things, not as good, but you see what I mean.
I just think it needs a change of priority, and I think eventually we're going to get there with this. You know, it's that shift. We have seen it with Joe Public over the years. People spend much more money, as you mentioned it yourself. People spend much more money on their mattresses now than they ever used to. Yeah. You know, you can actually go into, you know, one of the high street retailers now selling mattresses, and you can buy things like Vicesprung. That's 15 grand on a mattress, right? Not everybody's spending 15 grand on a mattress, but the fact is there are 15 grand mattresses in those showrooms. Some people do buy them, but you know, quite a lot of people are buying, you know, Simba, Emma, whatever, and those are not cheap. You know, no. you're still talking, you know, £1,000 maybe for some of those mattresses. Think about it in terms of people's cars. You know, people like, if you're driving a BMW Series 3, folks, you've spent £3.5 grand on your car seat. Put it that way. You've spent £3.5 grand on your car seat. How long do you spend in that car seat? Not very long at all, probably an hour a day tops. Well, how long do you spend in your bed? How long do you spend in that office chair during the day? Come on, you know, just wake up, smell the coffee, put some extra beans in there, you know. So thanks, Andy, for coming on. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
thanks everybody for listening. I'm sure as this rolls through during the day and we pick up more viewers, there will be more questions, and we'll get those back to you. If you're listening on Spotify, hi. You didn't get to see the chair with the tablet because it's a very visual thing. But what we showed you there in that middle section was a chair that had a holder on there, so you could use potentially a tablet sat in the chair. A great idea if all you have is enough room to swing a cat in your flat. So from now, it's goodbye from me, Graham Coath. Goodbye from Stephen. Thanks, Andy. Thanks to
no problem.
Our other guest today, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.